I was in the middle of a slow afternoon shift at the Red Pines University Library when it started. Nothing dramatic, nothing cinematic, just off. The day had been normal enough. The sun kept slipping in and out of clouds, the way it always did in early spring here. Oregon gray 1 minute, almost warm the next. Students were filing in and out of the building, dragging their backpacks and iced coffees like it was just another Wednesday. I had a small pile of dog-eared textbooks beside me, barely opened, pretending to study while mostly scrolling through a meme page on my phone. I remember looking up from my screen and thinking something was weird. It wasn't anything obvious. The noise level had dropped, but not in a library quiet kind of way. It felt like the whole place had held its breath, the kind of stillness that creeps in before a storm hits. I glanced around, trying to figure out what had changed. That's when I noticed a couple of students standing by the second-floor windows, staring down at the quad like something strange was happening outside. I wandered over and looked too. At first, I didn't get it. The campus looked the same. Well, mostly. Students walking across the square, backpacks slung over one shoulder, a girl tossing a frisbee to her dog near the fountain. Then I spotted a guy stumbling across the grass. His movements were jerky, like he couldn't get his legs to cooperate. He looked drunk, honestly. His shirt was ripped and something dark was smeared across his sleeve. At first I thought it was maybe blood, but my brain didn't want to go there. I figured he fell and scraped himself or got into a fight, whatever. But then another person came into view, walking just as weird, dragging one foot behind her like it was asleep. She bumped into a bench and didn't even flinch. "Is this some kind of prank?" one of the students beside me whispered. Then someone screamed down on the quad. Just one scream, but it was sharp and real. That's when people started paying attention. The guy who was stumbling tripped over the edge of the sidewalk and fell forward, catching himself with his hands, then rising way too fast, almost like he bounced. His head whipped around in this twitchy, jerky motion. I could see his face now. His eyes were wide, bulging, and jittery like they were vibrating in their sockets. His mouth hung open, saliva stringing from his chin. He looked gone, like whatever made him human had left. And suddenly, there were more like him. 3, 4, maybe 5 people scattered across the quad, all moving in that same awkward, robotic way. One of them slammed into a trash bin so hard it dented. Another ran full force into a lamppost and didn't even react. Just kept walking, mouth open, eyes shaking. Down below, a few students started backing away. Some pulled out their phones. I saw a guy trying to record with a grin on his face like it was a TikTok trend, until one of the twitchy ones lunged at him and knocked him to the ground. The sound it made when his head hit the pavement was awful. A hollow crack. He didn't move after that. I stepped back from the window, heart pounding. And that's when everyone's phone went off. Not a text, not a call. The alert blared from every corner of the room at once, high-pitched, loud, like a tornado siren crammed into a tiny speaker. Dozens of phones lit up in the hands of stunned students. I looked at mine. The screen glowed red with a blinking triangle and bold black text. Emergency alert. Biohazard containment failure. Red Pines region. Seek shelter immediately. Lock all doors and windows. Do not trust exposed individuals. Await further instructions. "What the hell?" someone said, voice shaking. A girl near the study pods burst into tears. Someone dropped their phone and it cracked on the floor. The noise outside had shifted. No longer casual talking and footsteps, but panic, screaming, running, shouts echoing off the buildings. I didn't think. I just ran. I bolted down the stairs, through the main doors and into the open air. The sky looked the same, but the air felt colder now. I didn't know where I was going at first, just away from the windows, away from the weird people who were suddenly acting like monsters. Then I remembered Sophie, my roommate, pre-med, smart, calm, always knew what to do. She had a shift at the reference desk that afternoon, right down the hall from where I had just been. I cursed under my breath and turned back around, heart pounding, lungs burning. As I crossed the lobby again, the front doors slammed shut, locked from the outside by one of the campus security guys. His uniform was stained with sweat, and his walkie-talkie crackled with static.
"Stay inside,"
he yelled.
"Shelter in place. The whole quad's gone bad."
I didn't stop. I pushed past the study tables and turned the corner into the reference area. "Sophie!" I shouted. "Over here!" came her voice, low, urgent, coming from behind the counter. I ducked down and joined her. She was crouched behind the desk, kneeling beside David, the guy from our floor who studied engineering and was always fixing things in the dorm microwave, and a third figure I didn't recognize at first, a campus security guy named Logan, still holding his flashlight and clutching a radio that wouldn't stop hissing. "What's going on?" I asked, breathless. "They're not drunk," Sophie said quietly. "It's something else. I saw a guy bite a girl near the cafeteria. He bit her neck, Alex, like full-on bit into her. She screamed and I think she's dead." David turned his laptop around. A map of the campus filled the screen, marked with red zones and flashing icons. "They've already got roadblocks up," he said, voice tight. "There's a full lockdown, local cops, maybe even military. There's one possible evac point, medical center on the south end, but it's past most of the red zones." "We'd never make it," Logan muttered. "Not without cutting through the commons or the underpass. And those are crawling with infected." My brain could barely process what I was hearing. Infected? Military lockdown? This was supposed to be a regular day. I was supposed to be finishing an essay, not talking about quarantine zones and survival plans. "We stay here for now," Sophie said. "Wait it out. See if there's another alert." But then the lights flickered. Just once. Then again. And then everything went black. The power cut out so fast it felt like the air got sucked out with it. For a few seconds we just sat there, frozen in the dark. The silence after the blackout was thick and immediate. No hum of lights, no whir of computers or buzzing phones, just the sound of my own pulse pounding in my ears. David closed his laptop with a soft snap. Shit. Logan clicked on his flashlight, the beam cutting a narrow slice of white through the dark. It caught Sophie's face, pale, tense, lips pressed tight like she was trying not to scream. "Generator?" I whispered. "No backup in this part of the building," Logan said. "Main power's out. Security office might still have battery systems, but that's 3 floors down and probably locked." "Locked like safe or locked like I can break it open?" David asked, already fiddling with the multi-tool keychain he always carried. Logan looked at him. "Locked like steel security panel and coded entry. You'd need an admin badge or know the override." David sighed and pocketed the tool. "Cool. Just checking." The flashlight moved again, landing briefly on my hands. I hadn't noticed how badly I was shaking until that moment. My fingers looked almost white. Sophie reached over and touched my shoulder. "Alex," she said, soft and steady. "We're going to be okay. We just need to stick together." But I didn't feel okay. I felt like I was sliding down the side of a cliff, grabbing at roots and loose rocks, pretending I still had control. The memory of that guy in the quad, his eyes vibrating, his mouth full of drool, was stuck in my brain like static. We stayed low behind the desk for a few more minutes, letting the shock settle. It was hard to tell how much time had passed. A few muffled screams echoed in the distance, maybe from outside, maybe from another floor. The library felt like it had gone from safe haven to tomb in a matter of seconds. Then the radio in Logan's hand crackled. It was faint, just a few broken words through the static, but enough for all of us to snap our heads up. "Containment failed. North side overrun. All units fall back. Repeat." Then silence. Logan adjusted the dial, tried to respond, but nothing came back. He swore under his breath. "What does that mean?" Sophie asked. "It means," he said, eyes flicking toward the darkened hallway, "we're not getting rescued anytime soon." No one said anything for a while. Eventually, David leaned forward. "Okay," he said, voice low and serious. "We have to make a plan. We can't just sit here waiting to get picked off. If those things are spreading across campus, it's only a matter of time before they make it inside." "There's a secure building," Sophie said. "The Biomedical Research Annex on the south end. It has its own generator, stocked labs, water filtration, everything. I used to shadow in the diagnostics lab there." "That's in the red zone," Logan said immediately. "Too risky. We'd never make it unless we cut through the mechanical tunnels." David turned to him. "There are tunnels?" Logan hesitated. "Yeah, service tunnels under the engineering wing, used for maintenance. I've been down there once or twice during fire drills. They're cramped and not officially public, but they connect most of the buildings on that end." "And they're not on the campus map?" I asked. "Nope. Not unless you've got staff credentials." That was enough for David. He was already pulling out a notebook and scribbling a rough layout from memory. "It's better than waiting around in here," he said. "They're getting smarter. I saw one of them open a car door on my way here. They're not just rabid, they're learning, or remembering." That sentence hit like a brick in my stomach. They're learning. That made it worse, somehow worse than just monsters. They still had parts of themselves, just twisted. Sophie nodded. "We go through the tunnels. If we can reach the annex, we can lock it down and regroup, maybe find answers." "Answers?" I asked. "To what?" She looked at me, and I could see she was afraid to say it out loud. But she did. "To what this actually is. This isn't a virus." "Not exactly. The way they move, the way they're drawn to motion and sound, but not smell or blood. It's not behaving like any known infection." David nodded, adding, "And that alert? Biohazard containment failure? That's not CDC language, that's military." Logan stood. "Then we move, quiet and fast." He led us through the darkened stacks, his flashlight covered by a torn scrap of hoodie to dim the beam. We moved like shadows, sticking close to the walls, pausing at every corner. My heart was pounding so hard it was all I could hear, like I'd swallowed a drum. We passed by the main reading room. A body lay slumped in one of the chairs, eyes wide open, blood dripping from the mouth. I didn't recognize him, but he still wore his student ID on a lanyard around his neck. It said Thomas. We kept moving. At the basement stairwell, Logan paused. "No turning back after this," he said. "The maintenance tunnels are narrow. If we run into one of them down there, we won't have space to fight." "I'd rather die moving than waiting," Sophie said, already stepping through. I followed her, then David, then Logan last, closing the door behind us with a soft click. The basement was colder, damp. The air felt thicker, like it had weight. Pipes ran along the ceiling, dripping in slow, steady plinks that echoed louder than they should have. We found the tunnel entrance behind a supply closet, just a narrow steel door with a keypad and an old yellow sticker that read, "Authorized maintenance only." Logan keyed in a code. The door opened with a groan, and a waft of stale air hit us like mold and rust had married each other. The tunnel was barely wide enough to walk side by side, so we went single file, Logan in front, then Sophie, me, and David taking the rear with a wrench he'd picked up off the supply rack. As we moved deeper, the noises from above faded. No more screams, no sirens, just the occasional clang of old pipes and our breathing. "I hate this," I muttered. "Same," David whispered. Then we heard it. Footsteps. Not behind us, not above us. Ahead, coming slowly, dragging, and something else too, clicking, like someone tapping their teeth together over and over again. We stopped in our tracks. The sound was faint at first, barely there, like teeth chattering in the cold. But it wasn't cold, not anymore. The deeper we moved into the tunnel, the warmer it had gotten. Clammy, humid, like the air was sweating. The clicking was steady, precise, not fast or frantic, just intentional, like a metronome for something horrible. "Hold," Logan whispered. We froze, backs pressed to the walls. Sophie reached back and grabbed my wrist, squeezing hard. I didn't say anything. My breathing was already shallow, heart racing. I could feel sweat dripping down the back of my neck. The footsteps were slow, dragging, but purposeful. Whoever, or whatever, it was, it knew these tunnels better than we did. David leaned in close. If it's one of them, it's moving alone. We could double back, take a side corridor. There was a split 10 feet back. "No," Logan whispered. "Splits don't go anywhere. Just pipe access. Dead ends." Great. The clicking got louder. I gripped the handle of a rusted metal pipe sticking out of the wall beside me. I didn't know what I was going to do with it, but I needed something in my hands. Something real. We saw it before it saw us. The beam of Logan's flashlight, still dimmed by his hoodie scrap, fell across the far end of the tunnel. Something moved in the glow. A man, maybe mid-30s, wearing a maintenance uniform, or what was left of one. His name patch was half torn, but the letters CAM were still visible. Maybe Cameron, or Campbell, didn't matter now. His skin was grayish, sweaty, but tight over his bones. His arms twitched like he couldn't control them. He dragged a wrench in one hand, metal scraping loudly against the cement floor. His head lolled sideways at an unnatural angle. And his mouth. His mouth was open, jaw slack, teeth clacking together in that rhythmic pattern. That was the clicking. I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry. I wanted to run so badly my legs ached from holding still. Logan slowly lowered the flashlight and motioned for us to press tighter against the wall. The tunnel wasn't wide, but maybe, if we stayed still, he'd just keep walking. But then Cameron stopped. He sniffed. Actually sniffed. Like a dog. Once. Twice. His nostrils flared. Then his jaw snapped shut, and he turned his head in our direction. His eyes locked with mine. There was no humanity left in them. Logan didn't wait. He shoved me back and yelled, "Run!" We took off, sprinting back the way we came, our footsteps slamming against the floor. Behind us, Cameron, or whatever was left of him, let out this horrible wet gurgling sound and began running too. He was fast. We hit the first corner hard, nearly tumbling over each other. I heard the wrench David was carrying hit the floor with a metallic clang. "Leave it!" Sophie screamed. We kept going. The tunnel forked again. Logan made a snap decision, veering left. We followed, not questioning it. We didn't have time to think. The new tunnel was narrower, tighter. Pipes lined the walls and ceiling, dripping water or something darker. It was too hard to tell. The floor was slick. My shoes slid with every step. Cameron was still behind us. I could hear the scuff of his boots, the metallic drag of that wrench, and that clicking, that horrible clicking. It was right on top of us. David grabbed my arm as I stumbled and yanked me forward. "Keep going." "I'm trying." We barreled through another junction. Logan skidded to a stop. "Dead end." No, there's got to be something," Sophie said, panicked. There was. A ladder, set into the wall, partially rusted, leading straight up to a vented metal hatch. It was about 10 feet high, just barely reachable. Logan was already on it. "Go! I'll cover you!" David didn't argue. He helped Sophie up first, pushing her by the waist. Then he jumped and scrambled up behind her. Cameron was closer now. I could hear his breathing, ragged, fast, animalistic. "Go!" Logan shouted again. I grabbed the ladder and climbed as fast as I could. My hands slipped on the wet metal, but I didn't stop. The moment I felt David's hand grip my arm from above and yank, I let myself be pulled. Behind me, I heard the wrench hit the floor again, then a scream. "Logan!" I turned just in time to see Cameron tackle him, slamming him into the wall. Blood sprayed across the cement. Logan still had the flashlight in one hand. He jammed it into Cameron's eye socket, and the man reeled back, but not before sinking his teeth into Logan's shoulder. "Go!" Logan bellowed one last time, then kicked Cameron backward. Sophie got the hatch open and we scrambled through it, one by one. David went last, slamming the hatch shut and jamming a pipe through the handle from above. Then silence. We collapsed on the floor, panting, soaked in sweat. We were in a dark utility corridor, wide enough to walk side by side, lined with broken lockers and dusty equipment. Emergency lights blinked along the walls, barely illuminating anything. I sat up and looked at David. His face was pale, ashen. He was shaking. Sophie was quiet, her back against the wall, eyes closed like she was trying to make the memory disappear. "Logan," I said quietly. "He didn't..." "No," David cut me off. "He didn't make it." No one spoke after that, not for a while. Eventually, Sophie stood. "We keep moving," she said, her voice hollow. "We're close now. This connects to the diagnostics wing. We get in, we lock it down, we figure out what the hell this is." "And what if it's already overrun?" I asked. She looked at me, jaw tight. "Then we die trying." We pushed forward, deeper into the corridor. I kept expecting another alert to hit our phones, a follow-up, an update, a message saying help was on the way. But nothing came. No messages, no calls, no signal. Just us, and the sound of distant clicking. We followed the emergency corridor in silence. The only sounds were our footsteps on the concrete floor and the low electric hum of the dying emergency lights overhead. Each flicker cast long, warped shadows along the walls, and every time the light blinked out, my chest clenched, waiting for something, anything to appear when it came back on. But it never did. Not yet. Sophie led the way now, gripping a broken broom handle she'd found near the lockers. David stayed close behind her, holding the pipe he'd wedged the hatch shut with. I brought up the rear. I still hadn't caught my breath since Logan, since we lost him. His scream was still stuck in my ears like it had been burned there. We hadn't said his name again since. The corridor curved left, then right, before sloping upward toward what looked like a secured lab entry. A heavy double door with a biometric scanner beside it. Wires trailed out from its base, leading into a half-pried open panel where it looked like someone had tried to hotwire the system and failed. Sophie crouched and inspected the panel. They were trying to override it manually. "Who?" I asked. She shook her head. "Don't know. Staff, maybe. Researchers. Could have been anyone trying to get in." David stepped forward. "I can try to reroute it. I've worked on smaller systems before, never anything like this. But the layout's not that different. If I can trick the scanner into reading a default user profile, it might unlock the door." "You sure?" Sophie asked. "Nope," he said, pulling tools from his bag. "But if we stay out here, we're just meat with better clothes." He got to work, kneeling beside the panel, flashlight balanced between his knees. Sophie and I stood guard, our backs to the wall, eyes fixed on both ends of the hall. For the first few minutes, everything was quiet. Then, faintly, barely audible, came the sound of footsteps behind us. This time it wasn't dragging. It wasn't frantic. It was careful, measured. Whoever or whatever it was, they weren't charging blindly. They were hunting. Sophie gripped my wrist. "Did you hear that?" "Yeah," I breathed. "David." "Almost got it," he said, sweat beading on his forehead as he worked furiously, wires sparking in his hands. The lights above us began to flicker faster, and this time they didn't come back on. Total darkness. No more humming. No more safety net. Just the sound of quiet breathing, the click of tools, and those slow footsteps getting closer. "David, now," Sophie hissed. He didn't answer, just kept working, knuckles white, jaw clenched. A figure stepped into the corridor behind us. I didn't see it at first, only heard the shift of its weight, the soft scratch of fingers dragging against the wall. Then the emergency light at the end of the corridor flashed once, and I saw it. It was wearing a lab coat, or had been. Now it hung in tatters, soaked in something dark and thick. Its mouth was torn open at the edges, stretched wider than any human should be able to. Black saliva dripped from its chin. But its eyes weren't wild like the others. They were calm, focused, and they were looking right at us. I stepped forward instinctively, blocking Sophie with one arm. "Get behind me." "Like hell," she whispered. The thing began to walk faster, clicking again, not with its teeth this time, with its tongue. A sharp ch-ch-titch noise, deliberate and precise, like echolocation. That's when I realized it was tracking us by sound. Sophie saw it too. She reached into her jacket and pulled out her phone, flicking the flashlight on and setting it on the floor. Then she kicked it down the hallway. The phone clattered, skidding far away. Ch-ch-ch. And the thing turned toward the sound. David let out a triumphant gasp. "Got it!" The panel sparked again, and the doors groaned open just enough to squeeze through. "Go now!" he yelled. Sophie pushed me forward, then followed. David ducked in behind us and slammed the doors shut. A soft click followed, locked. We all stumbled backward, falling against cold tile, breathing hard, alive, for now. The lab was lit by faint red lights, backup systems probably. Rows of metal shelves, sealed storage units, and workbenches stretched across the room. Computers blinked in standby mode. A monitor in the corner showed a frozen frame of a man in a hazmat suit, mid-sentence. No audio. I stood slowly, trying to slow my heart. "What is this place?" I asked. Sophie walked forward, scanning the room. "Diagnostics wing. But this part isn't on the official lab maps." David flipped open one of the laptops and began typing. "Looks like a secure research subnet. Files are encrypted, but I can try to..." The screen flashed. He leaned in. "Holy shit," he whispered. "This isn't a virus." We crowded around. On the screen was a project file, codename Skylight. Behind layers of digital lockouts were folders labeled population modeling, controlled exposure, ethnic genomic profiling, transmission vectors, and global containment scenarios. "This is military," Sophie said, her voice flat. "Or worse, black ops, off books." David clicked into a text document. It was a research summary, raw, unedited, never meant to be seen by the public. The first line made my stomach twist. Skylight, a controlled population correction protocol through selective neural disruption. "What the hell is population correction?" I said, already knowing I wouldn't like the answer. Sophie read silently for a moment, then looked up at us. "They designed this. On purpose. It wasn't supposed to spread to everyone, just people who met certain genetic markers." David scrolled further. "But it mutated, fast, outpaced the vectors. Now it's spreading uncontrollably." "They were trying to control who lived," Sophie whispered, "and now it's killing everyone." I staggered back from the computer, bile rising in my throat. My mind couldn't process it. A deliberate infection? To control populations? Suddenly, the entire emergency alert made sense. It hadn't been for the public. It was for the people running the experiment. "There's more," David said, eyes scanning the screen. "They planned to incinerate the campus if containment failed. Full erasure protocol." I turned toward the heavy lab doors. "They're not coming to save us," I said. "No," Sophie replied, her voice cold now. "They're coming to bury us." We stood in that dim red glow, staring at the screen like it had punched us. Nobody spoke for a moment. David leaned away, slowly closing the laptop. So that's it then. No rescue, no cure. Just wipe the slate clean. They're going to burn the campus, Sophie said, more to herself than anyone else. Torch the buildings. Erase the research. Pretend none of this ever happened. Not pretend, I said. They'll make it disappear. No one will know it existed in the first place. We were all quiet again. The hum of the backup power buzzed through the lab like a mosquito in the walls. The silence after that kind of truth sits in your chest like a stone. So what now? David finally asked. Sophie turned from the screen and looked across the room. Her eyes settled on a locked glass cabinet labeled Level 5 Samples. Inside were 2 cylindrical vials, both marked with yellow hazard stripes and barcodes. One had been cracked, the other was untouched. They were working on a failsafe, she said. A biological break, something that could halt the neural overactivity in infected hosts. At least, that's what it looks like from the notes. You think it could stop this? I asked. She shook her head. Maybe. Probably not. They hadn't even tested it. But it's the last vial, David said, standing beside her. We have to do something with it. Yeah, I said quietly. But what? We all looked at each other. It wasn't just the decision about the vial, it was what we believed. Whether we still thought this could be fixed, or whether we were just buying time. Sophie unlocked the cabinet using an emergency override key from the desk drawer. The mechanism hissed and opened. She reached in carefully, lifting the sealed vial with both hands. There was something chilling about how small it was. Just a tiny glass tube with clear liquid. Something that could maybe stop all this, or be used again to start it. What if someone finds this? I said. Someone who wants to finish what they started. David nodded. Then we destroy it. Sophie hesitated, her fingers wrapped around the vial. She looked like she was carrying her own heartbeat in her palms. There's an incinerator in the adjacent lab, she said. Biohazard grade. Once it goes in, it's gone for good. We followed her down a side corridor into the adjacent room. It looked like a smaller lab. Empty shelves, overturned chairs, blood on one wall. The incinerator stood in the corner, a heavy-duty burn chamber used for destroying contaminated specimens. A digital keypad blinked, waiting for a command. Sophie placed the vial inside, closed the chamber door, but she didn't press the button. Her hand hovered above it. I just keep thinking, she whispered. What if this is proof? Proof of everything. If we destroy it, all we have is a story no one will believe. We're not journalists, David said. We're survivors. That's all we're trying to be now. We don't have to be, I said suddenly. The words came out of nowhere, but they felt real, right. We can be more than that. We can make sure this never happens again. Sophie stepped back. Then we take it. David blinked. What? The vial, she said. We keep it. We get it off campus, somewhere safe, somewhere they can't cover it up. If there's evidence, someone will listen. Someone has to. I looked at her, then at David. It wasn't just about surviving anymore. It was about choosing what kind of people we were going to be when it was over, if it ever was. David nodded slowly. Okay, but we're going to need a way out. Sophie was already pulling up maps from a dusty terminal in the corner. There's a service tunnel from this wing that connects to the athletic fields. From there, if we go east, into the woods, we can reach the emergency perimeter. It'll be crawling with infected, maybe drones, but it's open ground. And if they spot us? I asked. She looked up. Then we run faster. We packed quickly. First aid, flashlights, 2 crowbars, and the vial wrapped in layers of insulated cloth and tucked into Sophie's satchel. David scavenged a flare gun from the wall emergency kit. Just in case, he said. Before we left, I took one last look at the lab. All the screens, the hidden folders, the blinking lights, all of it would burn. We moved quickly back into the corridor. The quiet was louder now, like the building itself was holding its breath. As we neared the exit to the tunnels, Sophie suddenly froze and threw her arm out to stop us. I followed her gaze. At the end of the hallway stood a woman in a blood-soaked research coat. Blonde hair matted to her cheeks. One arm bent the wrong way. Her eyes didn't twitch like the others. She didn't move at all. She just stood there, staring, like she'd been waiting. "Do we run?" I asked. Sophie didn't answer. Then the woman tilted her head and smiled. It was wrong. A twisted, broken kind of smile. She started moving forward, slow, deliberate, almost robotic. Sophie grabbed my hand and yanked me down the side hallway. "Move!" We bolted. Behind us, the sound of clicking teeth began again. Faster, louder. The woman was running now, her feet slamming the ground like hammers. David fired the flare gun over his shoulder, down the main hallway. It lit the corridor in red and slammed into a cabinet, exploding in sparks. The woman shrieked, high-pitched and guttural. We didn't look back. We sprinted down 2 more halls, through the utility room, and burst through a locked maintenance door into open air. The outside hit us like a slap to the face. Cold, wet, silent. The sky was dark now, overcast. Thick smoke coiled up from somewhere behind the trees. Distant sirens wailed. Not rescue sirens, warning sirens. We were near the outer edge of campus. The forest began just a few yards ahead, thick pines stretching into shadow. We didn't stop running. The trees swallowed us, and the world behind us disappeared. The forest was endless. Branches clawed at our clothes as we ran, roots snagging our feet. Every breath burned, every step felt heavier than the last. We didn't speak, not because we didn't have things to say, but because words didn't matter anymore. Survive. That was it. The cold settled in slowly. The sun was down now, or maybe just buried under the thick smoke rolling in behind us. A low, angry orange glow flickered through the trees, painting the night in firelight. They were burning the campus. We found a ravine about half a mile in and crawled down into it. Dry leaves, slick moss, and a tight curve of rock surrounded us. It wasn't perfect cover, but it would have to do. We huddled together, chests heaving, watching the trees above for movement. Nothing followed us. Not yet. David pulled off his backpack and slumped against the rocks. His face was pale, slick with sweat. He clutched his side like something hurt, but he didn't say anything about it. Sophie was already checking the vial, unwrapping it like it was a newborn. It was intact, uncracked, still sealed in its protective casing. She nodded to herself, more in relief than anything else. I sat down across from her, trying to stop my hands from shaking. The cold didn't help, but it wasn't just that. I couldn't stop thinking about the woman in the hallway. How she smiled, how she chased us, how familiar she looked even though I knew I'd never seen her before. That wasn't random. That wasn't instinct. That was recognition. She wasn't like the others, I said quietly. She was aware. Sophie looked at me, her voice low. "You think she was one of the researchers?" I nodded. Or worse, one of the ones who helped build it. David winced as he sat up straighter. Then it got to her too. I glanced over. "You good?" "Yeah, just bruised." I hit the ground harder than I thought. We didn't push it. We couldn't afford to think about what bruised might mean if it wasn't just a bruise. Above us, the orange glow flickered brighter. It wasn't just a fire anymore. It was a purge. "They're torching the whole campus," Sophie said softly. "All the labs, the bodies, the tunnels. It's a controlled burn like it never existed." "But we exist," I said. "For now." The forest stretched on in every direction. No signs, no lights, just trees and cold air. It felt like the world had ended behind us, and this was what was left. Just 3 people in a ditch, holding on to the last sliver of proof that it all happened. Sophie opened her bag again and pulled out a flare, our last one. "We can't stay here," she said. "We're still inside the exclusion zone." "And if we leave?" I asked. "Then what? We show up in some town with this thing in our hands and say what? Hey, the government built a population-killing virus and released it by accident." David looked between us. It wasn't an accident. Silence. He wasn't wrong. "We go public," Sophie said. "We make copies of everything we found. We send it to journalists, leak it to whistleblower sites, whatever it takes." "They'll erase us," David said, "if they haven't already. Then we give it to someone who can't be erased. 100 people. 1,000. Flood the world with it." "And the vial?" I asked. "We split it. Leave part of it in a safety deposit box. Another part somewhere they'll never think to look. Bury it if we have to." She looked at me, and for the first time in hours I saw fire in her eyes again. "We survived. That means something." I nodded slowly. "Then let's make it mean something." David reached into his coat and pulled out his phone. Still no service. No GPS. No signal at all. "We'll need to get far enough out to send anything," he said. "That means hiking until we hit the edge." "How far?" I asked. Sophie shrugged. 10 miles, maybe more." It sounded impossible. Our bodies were shot. We had no food, no real supplies, and barely enough daylight to see our hands. But we stood anyway, because doing nothing wasn't an option. We climbed out of the ravine. The world was silent now. No sirens, no drones, no clicking teeth. Just wind rustling the trees and the distant hungry roar of the fire consuming everything behind us. I didn't look back. We walked for hours, maybe days. It felt like both. We stuck to the low brush, followed the stars when the sky cleared, and rationed what little water we had. Eventually we saw lights, just faint pinpricks on the horizon. Could have been a house, could have been a town, could have been the next nightmare waiting to unfold. But we walked toward it anyway, because hope's a hell of a drug when you've got nothing else left. We never found Logan's body, never got answers about what the infection did to your brain, or how long someone could carry it before it took over. We never learned what exactly the mutation was that made Skylight spiral out of control. But we know one thing. They tried to hide it, and we're still here. Somewhere in a safety deposit box in a city far from Red Pines, there's a copy of every file we found, every memo, every genetic model, every flaw in the population correction algorithm. And locked away in a second location, sealed in an airtight container, is what's left of the last vial. Not because we want to use it, because we want to make damn sure no one ever does again.